Nice.
Hello, nuts and nerds, and welcome back to a Squirrel Plays. Today we're going to be talking about whether or not a game system can handle a campaign. And why are we doing this? Because I see the question come up a lot in various circles when talking about a TTRPG, particularly the rules-like TTRPGs, and the question is, can it handle a campaign? And my first reaction to that is, well, why the heck not? The two things I tend to see the most on this in the various corners of the internet are, one, there needs to be a defined path of growth through levels, such as Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and two, there needs to be a certain level of crunch to the rules, else gameplay will get stale over a long period of playtime. There's probably other reasons why people may think a game can't handle a campaign, but that is what I see the most and will be what I focus on in this video. Now, as always, a handy-dandy squirrel disclaimer for legal reasons. This video is for entertainment and does not dictate the way you can or cannot enjoy things. I am not your dad, and you are allowed to do what you want. All right, moving on. All right, so let's talk about the leveling up, except, without the levels. Is it possible? How does it work? I will go out on a limb here, no pun intended, and make the bold claim that if the character you're playing as has any kind of resource, stat, or abilities, then you can most likely find a way to level them up. And we're going to be using EZD6 and Tricube Tricube Tales, we'll see how many times I can get that right, as examples to work with. Funnily enough, I was about 2/3 of the way through this script before I remembered EZD6 even has a small section about long-term play solutions, so that was neat. There's also the level up deck you can get now, which is really, really cool, but we'll pretend we're back in a time where that didn't exist. So let's look at the resources you have in these games. In EZD6, you have HP, Karma Points, and Hero Dice. In Tricube Tales, you have HP and Karma Points. And don't worry if you're unfamiliar with these games and how they work, because I will fill you in where it's needed. Both games have HP, also known as your lovely hit points, which, to be fair, you're probably going to see in most games that involve any kind of physical danger. To the character, specifically, hopefully not the player. Does it make sense for every character to get more HP as they grow? No, but for knights, paladins, warriors, barbarians, and anything soldier or fighter adjacent, it's not a bad thing to increase. These are the guys on the front line, so it makes sense to bump up their HP for more survivability. Both of these games also have karma points, but they function in their own way. EZD6 karma points can be used to increase the result of your roll. 1 point equals +1 to the roll, and you can burn as many karma points as you want on a single roll. Also, you can hoard as many karma points as you want. In Tricube, you can have 3 karma max and use, unless I'm mistaken, 1 at a time. Using 1 karma point in Tricube reduces the difficulty value by 1. And considering the difficulties of your rolls are all either going to be 4 or 5 or 6, and you're rolling d6s, that's pretty jazzy. Karma can also do some other nifty things narratively in Tricube, but for this video, we'll just focus on the difficulty part. In both games, you start with 3 karma points, and in both games, karma can be used to improve your character's success rate at whatever it is they're trying to do. Characters growing through long-term campaigns can start with more karma, or in Tricube's case, be able to hold more of those points. The more karma points you have in either game, the more effective you are going to be. EZD6 has one more resource in Tricube, and that is the Hero Dice. And to give you an idea how they work real quick, these can be used to re-roll a die, as well as be used in places where karma can't. They're also used to get yourself out of some really nasty situations. And because of their potency, players only have 1 hero die when they start their adventure. You can get more, but they're hard to come across. One way to get them is that you can burn 5 whole karma points in order to create 1 hero die. The hero dice are strong, so that's a significant way to grow your character. Let them start their adventures with 2 or 3, depending on how far along in the campaign you are. Or maybe they get the ability to create hero dice with less karma. My point is, if you have resources, you have ways to level up your character. Are they exciting? Well, probably not the most exciting thing out there, but they will certainly strengthen your character and grow them past what they originally were and allow them to take on riskier and more dangerous endeavors. Thankfully, there's more to a player's character than just a couple resources. I mean, after all, they have to have some kind of mechanic to them to make them function, right? EZD6 has a Banes and Boons system. Banes will remove dice from a roll, or if there isn't any left to remove, then you roll multiple dice and keep the lowest result. Boons, on the other hand, add dice to the roll and then you pick the highest. As warriors get more experienced in the campaign, they get more, I almost said more better, they get more effective with their weapons and can swing with additional boons. The archers get better with their bows, the rogues get better at disabling traps and picking locks, the wizards become more knowledgeable and can decipher more complicated runes and ancient texts, so forth and so on. Just using the Banes and Boons system alone, there's tons of ways you can make your character grow and get better at not just what the game has them set up to do mechanically, but the player-specific things given to them through roleplay. But that's not all, as they say, because EZD6 also has inclinations which function like perks or feats. The inclination Dandy, for example, grants a boon to all social checks. Cat-like makes you only able to be knocked prone on crits, as well as lets you have a 4+ on a miraculous save when falling. And that might not mean much to you if you're unfamiliar with the game, but trust me, that's a pretty nice perk. There's a whole list of these options to choose from, and you normally get 2 or 3 of them when you make a character, but as you play through your campaign and you grow, well, what's to stop you from getting more? Tricube has a perk and quirk system, and each of those can be whatever you want them to be. And I'm serious when I say whatever you want them to be. It is that open. You're free to do what you want. The book lists a couple examples for perks, and they are anything from a magical sword, charming, necromancy, or a noble bloodline. So hopefully you can get the idea just how much freedom you have here. And then the quirks are the exact same way. I won't get into it too much, but while quirks can make rolls more difficult, it does benefit you to do so. You'll just have to either watch my video or play the game if you want to know how that works. Like and subscribe for more self-promotion. Wait a minute, hold up, this is always self-promotion. What makes this? So with that in mind, what's to keep you from growing your character in whatever way you want? And that, my fellow nuts and nerds, will take us into the second thing. We've talked about how you can use various resources and stats to level up your character, but what else can we do? Do you always have to have some kind of number to work with? The answer is no, though I will readily admit that numbers definitely do make it easier to level up from a design standpoint. But I am going to use arguably one of the best video games ever made, definitely one of my favorite video games of all time, as an example. That's right, Super Metroid. What a fantastic game that did so many things so well. If you're unfamiliar with this game or were denied the joy of playing it as a child, Super Metroid is an adventure where you start out with very little, but you grow into a walking arsenal, basically, able to take on just about anything. And those upgrades are what I'd like to look at as inspiration for what you might be able to do at your table. Let's just start with some of the basic weapon upgrades that you can get in this game, with the most basic being the missiles. Sure, it's a way to do additional damage so long as you have the ammo to spare, but the more important part here is that these allow you to open specific doors and destroy certain parts of the map, which allow you access to new areas to explore. Super missiles are the same way, just higher damage and a lower ammo count, but they still have the added benefit of opening new doors and paths. Power bombs up the damage and reduce the ammo count even more while bringing the same trick of opening new doors. These guys, however, probably destroy more of the environment than open doors, but I'd actually have to go back and double check. But what I wanted to point out here is that you can use them to destroy this tube, which lets you explore this whole underwater area, which is really neat considering how many times you went through that tube before, so it's pretty exciting to finally get to break through it. Also, and this is mostly just a fun fact, but you could actually absorb a power bomb to heal yourself if your health was 50 or below and you had enough ammo reserves to pull it off. I played that game for years and never knew how to do that. But anyway, fun facts aside, it's the other stuff you get that I'd really like to look at. Let's look at the new suits she gets. Yes, these do technically increase her damage resistance too, but we're going to ignore that part as it's really just an added benefit to their main function, and considering how the game progresses you, not really something you notice too heavily. The Varia suit, assuming I pronounced that right, allows you to withstand areas of extreme heat. This allows you to explore the more dangerous areas of the region that would normally burn you alive. Imagine, if you will, equipping your adventurers with a way to safely explore the inside of a volcano, which I guess Ocarina of Time did the same thing, but Super Metroid is better, so it doesn't matter. Moving on. There's also the Gravity suit, which allows you to move freely underwater, and by freely, I mean running, jumping, fighting, all that good stuff. Which, as I record this, can you imagine literally running away from a shark? That'd be weird, but actually kind of cool. Anyway, something like this would be very useful in a game like Fathom, where a lot of it takes place underwater. The ice beam you get for your main weapon is what allows you to actually fight against the Metroids, which are, kind of the whole main threat of the series. So imagine having an enemy all throughout your campaign, or at least a significant chunk of it, that you're having to avoid until you finally find a tool to make it vulnerable. The grapple beam is pretty straightforward. This just allows you to reach new areas. Same for high jump boots and the speed booster, and of course the oh-so-classic morph ball. And while yes, those are simple and straightforward, giving players tools to explore new areas is nothing to sneeze at. Unbreakable ropes, or magic ropes that can just extend upwards and stand on their own, are incredibly useful. My point is, these are a ton of upgrades that don't just boost attacks or defense. They give you utility, ways to explore and handle threats you otherwise couldn't. And I will readily admit that map exploring isn't quite the same at the table as it is in something like Super Metroid, but there is some overlap. For example, you can pull off the same trick with the water tube here and the power bombs. Have your players traverse through here once or twice, then acquire something later they know they can use to open this up, giving them a reason to come back. You can keep an adventure fresh and exciting by getting an item that lets you safely traverse the depths of a volcano, which gets you another item that lets you explore underwater, which may then lead you to something that lets you explore a jungle full of poisonous air, all the while fighting enemies that bring dangers in new and different ways other than just higher numbers. So, all of that just to say, there's loads of ways to grow a TTRPG character without a level up path, and this is completely ignoring the idea of narrative character development and growth. Another thing I wanted to get into, but didn't want to make this video too long, or at least longer than it already is, was that character growth, or more accurately, development, doesn't just have to be upwards. Nasty wounds could inflict permanent banes you have to deal with. Tricube even encourages acquiring more quirks. Maybe there's something you can do to overcome those banes and quirks, which may or may not result in you becoming even stronger in the long run. And on the topic of the rules not having enough crunch to keep things interesting, I will go out on another limb and say this. If you're struggling to make a campaign interesting and think the lack of crunchy rules or level up paths are to blame, I hate to say it, but it might just be a you problem. It might be time to take a look at how you're running things and see what you can do differently. And before you get up in arms about it, I will also add that part of that self-reflection might include asking what you and your players want out of the game. Maybe you really do just enjoy a path to level up through. I get it. It is fun. One of the more addicting things in video games is getting that level number to go up and then unlocking the next ability. You and your table might find that part more interesting than the storytelling and adventure side of things, and hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe crunchy rules are what keep you engaged, and juggling multiple status conditions and spell options might be what makes your brain happy. That's why it's so important to find players with those similar interests, but we're not really going to get into that today. My main point here was that I just find it a touch silly to say that a game can't handle a campaign. I think the question that some people might need to ask, instead of can this game handle a campaign, they should be asking, can I handle a campaign with this system? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like people miss the point of TTRPGs when they consider venturing outside the monster stat block or inserting their own growth opportunities a heretical practice. If you wanted a rigid gaming experience where things were predictable for the most part and you didn't really insert your own ideas, twists, flavor, and personal touch, I would think you'd be better off playing a video game. Rules light games do, in a way, require more from the GM because they treat you like an adult. That can seem a little odd, if not scary, to some who are used to having their hand held by a rulebook that doesn't allow them to make their own decisions. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a squirrel on the internet who still considers himself the new guy to the hobby and is sharing his thoughts as he learns them, and hey, I might completely eat my words when we run the Nuts campaign soon, so who knows? And with that ramble done and gone, let's move on to a shout out. Today's shout out goes to Zonk, mostly because I find his username amusing, but while I was working on this, he also posted some really nice pictures of his local squirrels. Look at these guys, man. They got a neat pattern on them, and this one looks like he's about to set off on an adventure. Unlike Adam's squirrels, who are just laying around getting fat for the winter. And that's it. Tell me how you've kept a campaign fun and interesting using a rules light system, or how you tried but just couldn't seem to make it happen. Is it the rules and leveling you enjoy more, or is it the adventure and story?